Bam. MC is in the house. All right, as usual, giving you guys a couple of moments to jump on. What's up, Saint? What's up, Big Joe? What's up, Jen? Big Mike? I just finished eating, so if I have all these facial mannerisms, look like a fucking cokehead, please know that I'm just cleaning my teeth with my tongue. It's nothing that insidious. Big Ant, what's up, brother man? Of course, my black belt spells sensei wrong. Goddamn spics. And of course, my black belt corrected himself. What's up, Big Steph? Very little Big Steph. All right, so what the fuck are we talking about today? Well, let's start off with my my topic, right? So what I had entitled the video of Big Jeff Glover in the house. What's up, my man? So sympathy is a sucker's game, right? So the difference between empathy and sympathy. Empathy, I am, looking at a starving child and I'm going, that child is in pain. He is starving. He needs food. I know what it's like to be in that situation. I am going to remedy this situation if remedying this situation is in line with who I am and what I'm about, right? That's empathy. Being empathetic is being able to recognize these different states of other individuals, right? Now, sympathy is looking at that same starving young boy and going, oh my God, I can't believe this young boy is starving. I can't believe he doesn't have any food. Where are his parents? How could we act like this? Now, the thing is, you are creating, when you are one of these sympathy-driven idiots, for lack of a better term, and we all suffer from this from time to time. And by we, I mean you. I don't fucking do this anymore. But if you're looking at that starving child and you are telling yourself, all of these things, you're creating this deficiency. And what winds up happening is the priority of your invested energy becomes dealing with that efficiency first. So that deficiency that you created on your own, once remedied, still has done fuck all for that starving child. Sympathy is a sucker's game. You are a sucker if you can be manipulated into feeling something that you are not in control of. I don't give people access to the control of my emotional state. Now, that's not to say that I've sorted all this shit out to the point where I'm, this enlightened, individual that, I could just basically, go with the flow, swim in the Tao, right? Without being affected. Far from it. I'm still working up my shit too. I'm still climbing my ladder too. The problem though is we've somehow in this society, and I say somehow, it's such a weak term, what we've allowed to happen because we have been so spoiled with surplus. We've allowed sympathy to somehow become virtuous. Somebody is considered to be virtuous and therefore moral if they experience sympathy. And the only way that we could track monitor an individual's level of sympathy is if they let us know. We have incentivized this. We have incentivized this outward display of sympathy. We call it virtue signaling. But what it has done it has created in our very identity a deficiency, an inherent deficiency in our ability to actually get shit done. To use the feeding, the starving young boy analogy, we have become a society of people who have considered individuals moral because they express a pain from observing a starving child. The expression of that pain, by the way, whether authentic or not, is what we are now assigning and associating virtue to. We do not expect, we do not require, before one gets that sort of, that gift and adoration, that honor, that label of virtue bestowed on them, we no longer expect them, require them to feed the starving kid. So we have a society, right, that has been in surplus for such a long time that we have allowed ourselves to completely disconnect from the actions that allowed us to become this powerful in the first place. You feeling bad does fucking nothing. It does nothing. You feeling bad does fucking nothing. If you feel bad and you're around me, shut the fuck up about it. Because I don't fucking care. Because as soon as you tell me, yeah, man, this lockdown's got me really fucked up, man. As soon as you tell me that, I'm going to look at you and go, are you asking me to fix that for you? Or why are you fucking telling me that? There's no utility in it. There's no function in it. Yet we have a society that is overridden with it. Now, before we get into the politics of the day, let's continue understanding this concept that I'm trying to fucking share with you people. Now, mind you, you guys I like, because you're the few that like me. Whenever you look at people that become so fucking emotional when looking at my videos or dealing with my content, why are they so fucking emotional? Because they're taking everything personally. They're running the formulas they're used to running. They see me, it's funny, I was in a coaching session the other day, and he might be watching. I don't know if he's watching right now, but he might be watching later. And it was a certain point, just a fresh example. This happened, I believe, yesterday, Tuesday. We were going through some stuff, and I had to give him, the mirror that the uncomfortable MC mirror, and show him what was going on and point out what was basically, some hard corrections. And at one point, we're doing this, through Zoom. The majority of my sessions are through Zoom. And at one point, I stop breaking down what I was breaking down, and I go, I want you to look at your body language right now. And he was sitting there, and he was doing this. The discomfort of me checking him on something. Now, mind you, I love the guy. If this guy's a success, I'm a success because I've charged myself with being a catalyst for his success, right? So our missions, our goals completely align. But pressure to power is the formula, right? And right now, in this situation, this individual is going through it. And how did it manifest itself? It didn't manifest itself in telling me to go fuck myself, or that's bullshit, or pushing back and debating, because we're past that. He knows I'm on his side. He knows I'm giving him a qualified observer's perspective. I'm giving him productive, tactical, sound advice. All those things are vetted. All those boxes are checked. But he still has a discomfort of getting checked. How did it manifest itself? It manifested itself with actual, a cathartic movement. The energy was pent up, and he knew he had to sit there and listen to it, and he just sat there shaking, And I pointed out to him, look at what you're doing. And it's like, okay, it actually gave him a beat where he was looking at his state. It was like, okay, I see how this is affecting me. But when we're looking at people nowadays who, when they encounter obstacles, when they encounter these obstructive occurrences of circumstance, they have a whole tool bag full of tools, but none of the tools deal with the fucking obstacle anymore. All of these tools, they've been collected and mastered, but the only thing they actually affect and work on is the social response to their expression of sympathy. People are good at it. They're good at getting sympathy. I have a 5-year-old daughter. She can go from, I don't like you anymore, I'm never giving you another hug, to, Daddy, you're the best daddy in the world, and I love you to the moon and back, in about 10 seconds. She is a master of manipulation. When we look at, let's start getting into the topics of the day. Let's start off with the COVID-19 nonsense. So COVID-19, SARS-CoV-2, the latest coronavirus, everybody knows all the lingo now. It's a legitimate virus. It has a legitimate effect. It affects people at different levels of severity, all the way up to and including death. But what we noticed is everything that I had described up until this point present itself, rear its head at some point. The easiest example of it is you're going to wear a mask to help other people. You're not wearing a mask to help you, you're wearing a mask to help other people. So if I'm not wearing a mask, that means I don't care about people. But if I'm wearing a mask, it warrants adulation. It warrants positive feedback from the people because I'm expressing to people, look, I care about other people. It's bullshit, by the way, wearing the mask to protect other people. It's fucking nonsense. But when we're looking at how people wind up installing these behaviors, you have to look at, well, what's being incentivized, right? People are, at the core, are very simple. It's like a dichotomous drive in individuals. It's pleasure and pain, and it starts from those two bases, and sure, it becomes more sophisticated, more complex, as we apply that to different situations. But it's pleasure and pain. Why do people virtue signal? Because they receive pleasure. That's why. We have a society that is so devoid of the pain that we've evolved with as a species that we've now swapped out the avoidance of pain with the pursuit of pleasure. That's who we are. And how could we possibly have a more evolved pursuit of pleasure than a society full of virtue signalers? You now have to give me positive feedback. You need to trigger these pleasure, receptors in my body. Give me all of these hormonally driven, pleasure experiences. You have to give that to me because I'm saying and doing things that, by the way, have absolutely no fucking utility in the world. I could put on a mask and you have to look at me as if I've done something. That's why these masks, that's why there's so many individuals that are still clinging to this idea of wearing a mask. It is narcissistic. It is the height of narcissism to expect other people to positively reinforce and reward your behavior when that behavior has absolutely no utility to the individual. I have to look at you like you're some fucking hero because you're wearing a mask? Fuck you and fuck your mask. Don't wear a mask. I don't give a fuck. But now I don't wear a mask and people want to look at me. Because now this is another application of that identity, that narcissistic identity that's built on sympathy-driven virtue signaling. They want to look at somebody without a mask and they want to go, hey, you don't give a shit about people. Because then the next thing that happens is after they express that, they look to recruit. They look to recruit the power, the likes, the shares. You don't care about other people, right? Right? And everyone's going, yeah, right. You're right. Good on you for saying something. This is what it is. There's no utility in any of this. So we've gotten to the point now where we're so spoiled. We have such a surplus that we have to create sympathy-driven virtue systems. And that's how we look to interact with one another. So now let's talk about Black Lives Matter. Right? Now, when was the date? Let me just look this up. I don't know when the date that George Floyd was killed. Whatever. I mean, it really doesn't fucking matter. This is more me. So, George Floyd, black guy, gets killed by cop. White guy. George Floyd, it turns out, was a complete piece of shit. I will upset some of my followers when I say irrelevant. He was a piece of shit. He robbed some pregnant lady by putting a gun to her belly. Oh man, that's fucked up. But irrelevant. Who cares if he was a piece of shit? That's not what we're discussing. I'll tell you right now, you start judging me by shit I did 30 years ago. Getting banned from Facebook is the least of my fucking worries. So the fact that George Floyd was a piece of shit, irrelevant. People that bring it up, like, you're wasting time. You're wasting time. The cop, turns out, was also a piece of shit. Relevant. Why is it relevant? Because that motherfucker's at work. George Floyd is just walking around being an American. We don't have to talk about what kind of American, but he's being an American. That cop is at work. The fact that he has a history of being overly aggressive, handsy, if you will, yeah, that's relevant. But at what fucking point does race have anything to do with this? It doesn't. It doesn't. The cop seems like a piece of shit. Relevant. George Floyd turns out was a piece of shit too. Irrelevant. You can't bring up George Floyd's history as a complete piece of shit as somehow a position of defense against what happened to him. Because that means that if you are a big enough piece of shit, then these government agents should be allowed to kill you. Which obviously nobody agrees with. But you got to understand that's where your logic leads when you're bringing up the fact that he was a piece of shit. No, I'm just bringing it up to show that he was resisting. That bullshit. Bullshit. You're bringing it up for the same reason they showed a picture of Trayvon Martin like he just finished finishing his 7th grade fucking Easter egg hunt. You know that picture we all saw? Trayvon Martin. You're bringing up George Floyd being a piece of shit. Same fucking logic why they showed that picture of Trayvon Martin. Not the one where he looked like a fucking extra in some fucking 80s Charles Bronson movie. The more recent versions of him. So you gotta be fucking logical. You gotta be fucking logical. So now, why is race brought up? Because it can be. Because it can be leveraged. It's something to be leveraged. There's an opportunity there. Obviously, right? The whole fucking country's on fire. Hyperbole, but you understand what I mean. So it can be leveraged, so it is. Now, why is it being leveraged? A lot of you guys don't want to fucking admit this. You don't want to acknowledge this. People hate Donald Trump. People hate Donald Trump. And I'm not talking about you fucking liberal, weak, loser pieces of shit that hate Donald Trump. You hate Donald Trump too. But the people that hate Donald Trump are the ones that are most threatened by him being in office. Remember when everybody was talking about Jeffrey Epstein? When you look at what has been done legally to put people, for the first time that we've known, that we've been exposed to, people who seem to be untouchable, suddenly they're starting to seem well within the reach of the government, well within the reach of Trump's administration. The people like the Nancy Pelosi's, right? The professional politicians, the professional panderers, the professional persuaders. These people hate Trump. And those are the ones that I'm referring to. I'm referring to the ones who have amassed fortunes that you and I will never be able to touch by staying behind the scenes of a machine that's done nothing but build their empires. How do they keep the engine of this machine going? By leveraging the opportunities to create the energy for that engine, like they're currently doing with George Floyd, like they've done before that with the COVID-19 nonsense. This is an election year. There are people who are protecting tens of billions of dollars of financial interests, who are protecting thousands of years of jail time and information. There are people who understand the quicker that Trump gets out of office, the quicker they get somebody in who's going to play ball like everybody before them, the quicker we can get back to the regularly scheduled programming. I have a lot of criticisms for Donald Trump. Donald Trump, he's not a Second Amendment guy. Donald Trump is a populist. Donald Trump has a lot of positions that, he's a New York real estate guy. He's going to be left, center, and right, depending on what you're asking and depending on what the numbers say, But one of the things I do accept to be true about Trump is that, number one, he's not in cahoots with all the people that have been running this fucking machine. He's not a friend to them. At this point, I mean, do I still need to share information? Do I need to talk about the 90% polls that Hillary was going to be president back, 3.5 years ago? Do I have to talk about the fact that nobody was held responsible yet for a completely doctored paper, that cited or inferred that Trump was somehow colluding with Russia and was an agent of Russia? How, they have gotten away with fucking everything. Now it's coming out that there was another campaign, an intel campaign, and surveilling the new administration coming in by people in the Obama administration, potentially even including Obama himself and Biden. This isn't a fucking mystery. The problem is, in order to acknowledge that, looping back for a second to what I spoke about initially, the problem is you don't get any pleasure by sharing that publicly. If pleasure is the process that you've adopted to sustain yourself, if you are a virtue signaler, there's no power to be had in acknowledging all these different things. There is no feedback loop that rewards you for accepting. Quite the opposite. Quite the opposite. If you guys have been following me for a few years, if you go back 5 years, 6 years, and look at the Master Chim page, I was skyrocketing up, right, in fans. And I think I had gotten up to, 62,000. And then suddenly the shit hit a fucking wall. And now I'll be honest with you, I've never made money doing this, so I do this because admittedly it's somewhat cathartic. I get asked to do this. I get reinforced by people sharing with me afterwards that they enjoy it. But suddenly the numbers of the growth of the Master Chim page just hit a wall. I'd share something, I'd make one of my memes, or I'd make a post, or I'd make one of these videos. And there was a time where I'd have, 1 million people share one of my, see one of my memes within a week. Now I'll share something, and my page still has upper 50,000s, which just goes to show that they can't stop it, that it's still growing. They're just, putting a governor on the process, right? Shadow banning. It was over a year before I heard the term and concept shadow banning. I had no fucking idea what that was. I didn't fucking care. I'm not feeding my family by doing this. So, the amount of energy I'd have to invest to figure this shit out just wasn't worth it to me. So, when you look at what people have been doing since this whole thing started, if you are somebody who's acknowledged this, you get penalized. You've had people on the right thrown off of social media. You've had them canceled, their PayPal accounts canceled. You've had bank accounts, literal bank accounts have been fucking canceled because of people's political beliefs. Political beliefs, by the way, that coincide with our Constitution. So there's no pleasure in being somebody who understands this. But that's the price we pay for not being suckers. Look at the Black Lives Matters, right? So it's an organization. And it's tyrannical. It's un-American. There's no redeeming quality to that organization. If I say Black Lives Matter is bullshit, one of my critics or opponents would reply with some statistic about, blacks being abused by police. And it's this is the first fucking mistake. Number one, Black Lives Matter Matters is a fucking organization. Now, why is it titled Black Lives Matters? Because the people who are pulling the strings are not fucking stupid. They're not stupid. If I started an organization and called it No Starving Children, we'll form an organization, No Starving Children. And then I go out and I break shit and, I steal shit and I hurt people. No starving children. No, we spray painted everywhere. You know how easy it is for me when somebody tries to push back and says what you're doing is wrong? You know how easy for me is to go, well, you think children should starve? Is that what you're saying? Are you telling me that you support starving children? They're not stupid. Unfortunately, we are, as Americans, collectively. Not me, not you too, them. Black Lives Matter is an organization, and it's un-American. It's doing a very, very effective job at converting all of these people that will look at the title of the organization, that will look at the talking points and be activated towards a behavior that doesn't help anybody, but the organization, Black Lives Matter, and the people behind it. If we're looking at what are the actual statistics, I've shared them before. Statistics of blacks getting killed, by cops. Does it happen? Oh, of course it happens. Of course it happens. Did anybody think that it didn't happen? Does anybody think that it shouldn't happen? Somebody could say, well, black people should never be shot and killed by the police. And well, it's like, okay, let's just look at that statement. Dude, I don't agree with it. If a black guy is about to kill somebody, should he be shot by the cop? It's like it's easy. This Socratic fucking filter that we just put over everything. You just start talking about the scenarios that disprove the assertion made by the person you disagree with. Nobody should be killed by police. Okay, well, if somebody's going to kill somebody, should the cop kill them before they kill the other person? Well, no, it's not different. So don't say never. Don't say always. Don't use these terms that completely remove the subtlety and the nuance of positions that allow us to functionally have a fucking society. You want to broad brush shit, it's like you better have the fucking Thanos glove with all the fucking stones, because that's the type of power you think you fucking have. The real world doesn't work that way. So do black people get shot and killed by police? Yes, of course they do. So do whites. More than blacks, by the way. Yeah, but and then they counter to that, right? You play the game. It's like fucking cat's cradle when you were a kid with the fucking the twine, There's always the next move, then the next move, then the next move. Whites get killed by cops more than blacks. And then it's like, okay, here it comes. Yeah, but blacks are only 13% of the population. It's like, yeah, but they commit a higher disproportionate amount of crime. Yeah, but that's because cops are racist. So there are a whole bunch of surveys called victim surveys. And the victim surveys look at these crimes that are committed, and based on the feedback of the victim of these crimes, what were the races of their attackers. And they're consistent and in line with the statistics that we look at crime rates for, right? So here's the thing. In every race, there are going to be good ones and there are going to be bad ones. Each race would do itself a disservice by sacrificing the well-being of the group for the protection of the bad ones. when I hear a black guy, right? I grew up in a black neighborhood. When I hear one of my childhood friends say, all police are racist, all police are KKK, oh, it's like, is this the hook of a fucking song that we're gonna dance to? Because it's fucking retarded if you're saying that that is the actual reality that we live in. Now, I guarantee you, I got fucked up by more cops than mostly all of you. As a teenager, I got fucked up by some cops. I remember one time, I fucked this dude up. Fair fight, one-on-one. I beat his ass, though. I beat his ass so badly, though, that his mother called the police on me and told the police that I pistol whipped her son. I didn't have a pistol. I didn't pistol whip him. He got these hands. That's what he got. He got this right here. Smith & Wesson, that's what he got. The cops found me maybe 20 minutes after that. And they fucked me up. They thought I had a gun. I fucked this kid up. His face looked like fucking hamburger meat. And they thought I had a gun. So they fucked me up. Where's the gun? Where's the gun? Where's the gun? I didn't have one. When they finally believed me, it was after I looked at them and said, what, it was that fuck? I'm not going to say his name because there's some mutual friends that watch my stuff. But I said, what? That kid said I pistol whipped him? And I told the cops, I said, bring me to his house right now and I will fuck him up again the same way I did the first time. It was that statement that the cops went, yeah, he probably fucked that kid up. And they left me alone. Mind you, I couldn't fucking breathe right for a week. I had a grown-ass man. I was probably 14 at the time. Grown-ass man fucking did something to my ribs. I couldn't breathe right for at least a week. I didn't get my mother and go to the precinct. What the cop did wasn't right. Like, these things aren't mutually exclusive. It's like, yeah, but what he did was wrong. I know. Yeah, but that's not fair. Right? Yeah, but something should happen. Okay? Like, there's a certain point where if you're an individual who doesn't identify himself as a victim, if you're somebody who doesn't feed off of the energy that comes from that virtue signaling process, the argument for pursuing those things just falls on deaf ears. I don't give a fuck about going and reporting a cop because he hit me. If I'm in a position where I have to do that in order to survive, it's a different reality we live in. Now, this cop, and let me organize my point here because I do have one. This cop, Derek Chauvin, whatever the fuck his name is, who was on George Floyd's neck. It's my understanding, so I'll say this in the context that I'm describing. It's my understanding that the autopsy concluded that he did not die of asphyxiation, and then an independent review was done by another coroner, and he came to the conclusion that he did die of asphyxiation. But it's my understanding that that independent review was not another autopsy, but he basically reviewed the information. And that guy, Michael Baden, I think, he was hired by the family to do this. You know, there'll be a trial, and we'll see what happens. You know, they're charging with, I think, murder too. Some pretty high, you know, some high criteria to meet, you know, in order to make that stick. I know, but I remember a post I made the other day. It's like, what happens if he gets off? You guys are going to lose your mind? Because the big sentiment now is, oh, this is, you know, they keep killing us. They keep killing us. It's like the guy who's being accused of killing George Floyd is literally sitting in jail on $1 million bail facing murder too. What the fuck are you complaining about? And you have to make these people answer that. Because they want to, instead of legitimately answering it, they want to dismiss that type of question by saying, well, so what? He's going to go to jail. We died. One of our guys. Oh, so you're worried about black people dying. That's your issue. You're worried about black people dying. Well, ain't that some shit? Now, most of you guys know what I'm going to bring up now. How about Chicago? How about Chicago? When's the last time we started overthrowing the government just in Chicago? Not the whole fucking country, but Chicago. Let's just look at the violence in Chicago. Let's look at how many blacks get murdered in Chicago. We don't got to talk about who's killing them yet. We ain't talking about that yet. We're just talking about the number of blacks dying in Chicago. It's got to be something wrong with Chicago, right? Because that's the logic. This is happening. I don't want it to happen. So something needs to be done. Well, how come there was never this uproar in Chicago? Why? Because there's no power to leverage out of Chicago. All of the people who are trying to regain control of our government understand there is no currency to be extracted from Chicago. That's why it's never being leveraged. And it gets leveraged by a random incident, spotlighted, highlighted, people incited by the media, reinforced by the local politicians. That scales up to national political figures. Like, this is a formula that they run whenever they want. How come they've never run it on Chicago? It's like, renting a fishing boat to go fishing for guppies. They're like, it ain't worth it. Nobody gives a fuck about black kids in the government. These liberals, panderers, the fucking Wakandan chess set, right? That wasn't mine. I saw this other thing. The chess set from Wakanda. Those fucking people, they don't give a fuck about black kids. These people have been in fucking government forever. Joe Biden, by the way, was the vice president during an 8-year run where we had a black president, half black, but black enough president. How come they didn't solve everything during those 8 years? Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, Cuomo. These people have been in politics, have been in offices of influence, legislative positions for decades. How come they never solved any of this? Donald Trump hasn't been here 4 years. Some might say, yeah, well, Donald Trump doesn't give a fuck about black kids either. In which I will say, so what? Who gives a fuck if he cares about black kids? What I know is that how he feels is not something I give a fuck about, because I don't do the sympathy fucking sucker game. I look at what he's actually done. What I understand, best economy we ever had. Lowest unemployment for black youths in history. Why has he done so many things that have been beneficial for the black community? You could say prison reform, but I don't want to, stereotype anybody. So you're actually saying you give a fuck about what he says more than what he does? Because if you look at what Trump's done in 3.5 years and compare that to the decades that the fucking Wakandan chess set has been in fucking office, there's no comparison. The thing is, though, The Chuck Schumers, the Nancy Pelosi's, the Comos. They'll tell you everything that sounds good. They'll tell you everything that sounds right. But what do? Fuck all. They don't do a damn thing. So, my opinion, it comes down to sympathy. It comes down to who's sitting here and saying, I feel for these people. I feel for these people struggle. Because here's the thing. If you're an individual who could only get value by virtue signaling and having that reinforced, rewarded behavior, if you're one of those individuals, then black people have to be victims. Because if they're not victims, so goes my method for fucking looking and feeling good. I can't be a hero if you don't need to be saved. Well, this fraudulent, narcissistic hero fucking, epidemic that we have running around in this country, it needs victims. But it needs victims that don't actually require any real risk to save. No, I'll just sit here and I'll march like a fucking idiot. Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter. Look, I'm winning. Look how heroic I am. Look, I'm facing the man. I'm taking on the machine. No, you're not, you fucking moron. You're destroying small businesses. You're enraging a fucking violent element in every municipality this has happened that gave them all the excuse and opportunity they need to destroy billions of dollars of fucking infrastructure. At the end, like before all of this, the guy that fucking knelt on Floyd's neck was in jail charged with murder. That happened before all of this. Steve Antonio says, stop it. They weren't the only ones looting. I said the violent criminal element. Are you telling me that people other than the violent criminal element were looting? I don't know. I don't understand. I don't know. Maybe he's not talking to me. I don't know. But now they call it racist. They want to say that Chauvin was racist. Is that all we need now? All we need now is people to be of different races. And aside from the actual crime that was committed, we also label it racist because they were different races. Isn't that the way we preserve racism, by the way? We allow people, or I should say a better way, we do not allow people of different races to interact without acknowledging the fact that they're different races, that acknowledgement is embedded in every interaction. Is that not how we preserve racism? I mean, it's not like Chauvin was on the dude's neck going, die, nigger, die, nigger, die, nigger. I'd grant you racism if that were the case, but it wasn't the case. He seemed like a cold, heartless piece of shit that was completely disconnected from what was happening. But racist? Why was he racist? I mean, do you really think that it's impossible for a white guy to be a complete piece of shit, to be a power-tripping fucking cop without being racist? Or is it that if we don't call it racist, you start to lose all of the arguments that you have for validating your very identity? I don't get it. I don't understand it. The guy's in jail. Why is it being blown out of proportion? Well, I know why it's being blown out of proportion initially. I know the strategy of it. This is an election year. There are people who need Trump out. I'm not talking about citizens. The people who need Trump out are all the people that have been controlling shit right up until, and to some extent, even while he's been in office. They need him out. They tried hanging him on the fucking COVID. That didn't happen. Now they're trying to hang him on a case where a black guy was killed during an arrest by a cop, a white cop, who is charged with murder because of it. That's what they want to hang their hat on? Like, can you really logically say that this is not blown out of proportion? Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter. Well, can we go to Chicago? Can we tell those people, hey, listen, hey guys, I don't know if you heard this, but Black Lives Matter, and you guys are kind of killing a lot of blacks. Like, I don't get it. I don't get it. Why the selective outrage? Not the outrage. Listen, if you're somebody who, by the way, like, I could disagree with you, and I've shared this sentiment before. I could disagree with you completely about the premise, the validity of your argument for protesting. And I do. You're an American, you're allowed to protest. I'm never going to argue that. I will argue the validity of your reasoning, because I think it's flawed. I think it's engineered. I think the people, both black and white, that are marching down the street talking about they got to stop killing us, Black Lives Matter, or like, you are being used like a fucking tool. How are you not disgusted with yourselves? That it's that easy to fucking, it's that easy to fucking just have you go in the streets and fucking do whatever they want. How are you not fucking disgusted with yourselves? That it's just so easy to make you so emotional. It's so easy to get you to just basically be completely complicit in all of the things that are happening. All of the escalations beyond the protests. Did you guys hear that there's a 6 or 7 square block area in Seattle that is being occupied by like an Antifa force? Like, do you realize how fucking weak the people need to be to allow this to happen? And how utterly disconnected and tyrannical the powers that be need to be? Do you need any clearer of a message of how these people don't give a fuck about the citizens than Seattle? Then these people were allowed to overrun a police station, overrun City Hall. They have sectioned off areas. Do you know how, what do I think should happen? I'm a firm believer in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Every one of these fucking business owners should be in their businesses with a fucking shotgun pointed at the fucking door. And they want to party, let's party. As our constitutional rights allow us to do. To protect our shit. When you start blasting a bunch of these fucking Antifa cunts in the face, yeah, then let's see how many of them are that fucking committed. These are bullies of an aquarium. They live in an aquarium. This is how they're able to do this. The fact that we have so many suckers who are so easily sympathetic to whatever cause these would-be tyrants put in front of them, the fact that they are complicit allows these people the opportunity to get the leverage that they do. Somebody comes to fucking rob my house, good luck with that. You have businesses that are being told by elected officials that the looters should be given space to get it out of their system. That's how people talk about animals, by the way. That's how people talk about animals. If I tell you this guy's a piece of shit because he's looting, and you tell me, well, you don't know his upbringing, I'm the one who's treating him like a human being. You're the one that's treating him like something less than a human being. Because I'm saying the expectations of how he conducts himself are beyond what he's currently showing. When you rationalize his behavior, you are also saying that he's not capable of doing any better. Who are the racists here again? Who are the racists? I had some fucking Canadian fucking cat lover the other day try to call me a fucking, I don't know if she called me a white supremacist or I don't know what the fuck she called me. She called me a whole bunch of shit. And she said that she marched with the protesters and she understands, but I don't. And I told her that, well, I grew up in the Bronx during the 80s and my father's been called nigger more times than you've hugged cats. For some reason, didn't hear from her again. But this is the disconnect. I wouldn't be surprised if she did either of two things. One was completely dismiss and just reject and sort of mentally block the interaction with me. The other one is to sit down and cry and realize that her whole world's a lie. Or that she spoke that way to somebody who's actually a victim too. Oh, I can't believe I spoke to him that way. I didn't know. I didn't know you were a victim. Oh my God. My father grew up broke as shit in Puerto Rico. Came here as a teenager. Dark skin, very dark skin. Couldn't get jobs. We lived upstate for a year. And I was just talking to my mother about this the other day. We lived upstate for a year and he couldn't get work, you know. And, you know, it didn't matter if he was black or Hispanic or black Hispanic or like, he wasn't white enough. And those were the consequences. I never heard my father complain a day in his life about obstacles put in front of him. Not saying that he didn't. I was just his son. I never heard it. My father enlisted in the military, fought in Vietnam, went to school, refrigeration school after the war, became an HVAC engineer and mechanic, got a union job in the hospital in New York City, worked his way up out of the union into management, had a side business where local small businesses in the Bronx, he was the AC guy. My father hustled. He never complained. I lived in apartments right up until I was, I think, 12 years old, when my parents were able to afford their first house. We moved into a house. Like, my father just climbed the ladder. My brother and I, both married, first wives, children, We're both gainfully employed. Like, what would excuses have gotten my father? Yeah, well, not everybody's like that. Oh, no, I agree. I agree. Not everybody's like that. Not everybody's strong enough to say, you know what, this guy doesn't like me, but I don't give a shit because it doesn't matter, and I'm going to design my own ladder and climb it myself. Yeah, I agree. Not everybody has the ability to do that. But we now have a society that doesn't even help people learn how to be that. There's a starving kid. We reward the person who shows the most pain, the most suffering, an observation of that starving kid. We don't reward the person who feeds the kid first, who feeds the kid best, who prevents other kids like that from starving. We don't reward that anymore as a society because there's no political leverage. We reward the emotion because once we've incentivized and reinforced a system of everybody looking to experience pleasure through the demonstration of emotion, then everybody's manipulatable. Everybody is malleable. Everybody has a fucking remote control on the top of their heads that all the people in charge get to press now. Because aside from being good, from doing good, like every generation before these last few, we now have a society where people want to be told they're good. They don't have any, what I call transcendent alliances. They don't have a religion, a God, a code, just a fucking moral compass that's codified in some way, that exists outside of them, that they can look at day in and day out and go, am I doing the right thing? And they can look at this code, they can look at their God, their gods, their feedback loop, whatever it is, and have that message come back and say, yes, you're on the path. No, you're off the path. We don't have that anymore. What we have now are people that look at other people like them and go, I'm doing good, right? And the other person's going, yep, me too, right? And the first person goes, yep, you too. And that's the morality we have. Men used to have a job in front of them. They used to have to provide and protect their families. I can't say that job's been taken away. I could say they've been incentivized to give it away. And it's easy. When there's no pressure, it's easy. All right. Let me deal with some questions here. Who has a question? There's a lot of comments here, and all right, Drecky says, what's up, Drecky? He says, George Soros isn't even the real problem. There are people above the George Soroses, the Bill Gates, whose names we don't know and can't know. But the problem really is the people that go along with the narrative and allow them to do what they do. And I agree with that sentiment. Well, it's George Soros. It's just like, whoa, wait a minute. Take all those people and just say, call them the fucking boogeyman for all I care. But they only get power if we give them power. If we understand and have a relationship with who we are and what we're supposed to do, then whether or not somebody else tries to influence us is irrelevant because we're focused on what we know is the right thing. So it doesn't matter if it's George Soros. What, you think if George Soros dies tomorrow, that, all the dead trees are going to come alive and fucking butterflies are going to be everywhere? Like, we need to remember who we are. Drecky says they don't get their bottoms powdered right and they throw a tantrum. It's true. Because that is very like, you've ever seen a spoiled child, right? My wife and I have 4 children. I've coached children 20 years. Many of my individual coaching students that I work with one-on-one, fatherhood and parenting is a very common theme in the coaching process that I go through with them. Children are going to do what they're incentivized to do. They have a whole slew of drives and instincts, and certainly each individual child is wired different in temperament and intellect and a whole slew of other attributes. But where the rubber meets the road, if they touch the stove and it's hot, they're going to not touch the fucking stove. If they touch the stove and a piece of candy falls down, they're going to touch the stove. That's just the way it works. So these people who are now 20, 25, 30 years old and still acting like children understand that it's because since they were actually children, they've been nothing but incentivized to handle their issues this way, with this cathartic, tantrumized identity. And everybody around them has always reinforced it. That's why they continue to look for the fraudulent, tragedies and injustices. They need these things to exist, or they can't be who they are. If they have to bullshit a little bit to validate something, of course they're going to do it. They have. Steve Antonio Johnson says, in my opinion, what my black people need to do is not easily vote Democrat, establish systems that made us successful prior to the civil rights movement, mimic Atlanta, Georgia, and Harlem of the 40s from an economic standpoint. I don't disagree with you there. What I would say, I think a little bit more productively, is you need and black people. You're black people, Steve, the way you put it. They need to find out how to be successful economically and stop looking at it through the lens of being a black person being successful economically. I'm a black belt in jiu-jitsu, right? I'm a black belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. If somebody asked me, what do Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belts drink? I'd go Monster. Because I'm a jiu-jitsu black belt. So whatever I drink, by definition, is what a black belt drinks. A black person, no matter what they do, they're going to be doing as a black person. It is ill-conceived, inaccurate, unhelpful, inefficient to reduce the accomplishments of black men and women to some sort of customized black application of economic theory, black application of entrepreneurship, of innovation. No, there's economics. There's never been a more equal in opportunity society than this one in the history of mankind. You can't have a black president, black billionaires, black Republicans. You can't have all of that and still get that America is racist and oppressing black people. You can't get it. How do you start cleaning that dirty lens that so many black people looking at society with? You start by reducing your efforts to black efforts and make peace and understand the fact that anything you do will be done by a black person, and be okay with that. And then just pursue the strategies that make the most sense strategically. Elliot says Soros is just one of the pillars of the NWO system. Yeah, I mean, I agree. Steve Antonio Johnson says, Justin, what's your honest prediction if that cop somehow is found innocent and gets off? What my prediction is for how people will act? They're going to lose their fucking minds. They're going to lose their fucking minds. Not like the white people did after OJ got off. That's losing their minds, but a different way. No, people are going to lose their minds this time like some sort of fucking sci-fi movie. When some virus turns everybody into raving fucking animal lunatics. It's going to look a lot more like that. By the way, it was Murder 3. Then it was elevated to Murder 2. Like, prosecutors, he's got his fucking work cut out for him. There's a good chance this guy gets off from the charges that he's facing. It's not right. It's not right. Well, this is our system. This is our system. There's proof. There's a process. There's due process. There's a jury of their peers. There's the ability to face your accusers. It's like we have all these things in place because it is the best system on a society-wide level. Have there never been injustices? I mean, see the argument against our system is not one that, or is not validated if it's one that's built on pointing out the flaws of our system. Pointing out the flaws of our system or the inconsistencies that over hundreds of years have occurred, that doesn't validate throwing out our system. If anybody, the royal you, wants to throw out our system, then you need to have the system that replaces it. And good luck with that, because this is the best one in the history of mankind. The job should always be to express the system more consistently, more effectively. Not throw it out because it's imperfect. Because if we start throwing out things that are imperfect, we'll have nothing left, including ourselves. Andrew says, oh, is this going to be long? All right, it doesn't look that long. Although I do not believe in a command economy, I can respect the fact that socialist rifle associations believe that power should rest with the people and an armed civilian population ensures that. As we're in communism, the power rests with the state. It's about the Second Amendment to me. That's why I paid for a one-year membership. They are not about the Second Amendment. Well, there's a lot there, Andrew, and I don't know exactly what your positions are, nor am I asking. But here's the thing. I mean, Socialist Rifle Association. If a group is willing to identify itself as socialist, it's anti-American. We're not a socialist society. We have socialist programs, right? I think there's an argument for some of them, but the problem is it's hard to stand by an argument for those socialist programs when we don't get to preserve, who's in our tribe to begin with. It's like nobody in my house, right? I'm in my home right now in PA. Nobody in my home is going to starve. I could say that. Nobody in my home is going to starve. So if somebody's hungry, I give them food. I'm in charge of the food. I give them food. It's a socialist application. But one of the underlying premises of this being functional is that I decide who's in my house. It's like, do I want all Americans to have health care? Yes. I want all Americans to have health care. But along with that, I want to be able to control who becomes an American. You can't have open borders and a welfare state. It is not sustainable. So when somebody starts identifying themselves as socialists, and here's the thing, that the game that I don't play. People want to establish their own unique identity in the nuances of these terms. Well, I'm I'm anarcho-capitalist. I'm like, listen, have that fucking conversation with somebody who gives a shit. Because let's be honest here. You're somebody I know on social media. Many people who follow me I've met in person. I have different levels of alliance with. But by and large, do what the fuck you're going to do. I don't give a fuck who you are and what you do. Just leave me the fuck alone. I'm for the Constitution. I'm for the Bill of Rights. I think that's the greatest compromise that a group of people have ever collectively come to give people an equal amount of opportunity to basically benefit from the fruits of their own labors. Yeah, but blacks were slaves. Black was slaves. Yeah, that was fucked up. And that was fucked up. But you know what? They're not slaves anymore. You're not slaves anymore. So shut the fuck up about it. Yeah, but it's a part of who we were. You know, I gave I've used this example before, but I remember giving a seminar to a bunch of women. I called it Pretty Violence. I had a bunch of women there. And one of the things that we spoke about was, you know, the fact that many of them were sexually assaulted. And my response to them was, did the assault last 5 minutes, 10 minutes? The collective understanding was 5 minutes was a good representational time of this assault. I said, anybody who considers themselves a victim, they identify themselves as a victim, is choosing 5 minutes of their life to monopolize their identity. And my argument is always going to be, if we're going to choose 5 minutes to monopolize the narrative of our identity, I want to pick the strongest, most powerful 5 minutes there is. Not me at my worst. So the person who argues that slavery needs to be maintained as a component of the black identity, the person who argues that is a fucking loser. There's no strength in looking at yourself as a slave. There's no strength to be had in that. There is certainly power in talking about the delta, the difference between where people were and where they are now. But that's not using the slave as a component of your identity. Oh, here goes Elliot. Defund police, right? So Elliot's a cop, so he's not saying to defund them. But that's one of the latest things. That's a good prompt there, Elliot. So the defund police. There are two positions that I think people who tend to agree with me on stuff have taken publicly, I've seen. You have one group that says, yeah, fuck it. Have at it. Let's see what happens. This'll teach them. Defund. Tell the police to back up and see what happens. And when they're crying, we'll go back and we'll see them. No. I'm of the other mindset. They should not get an iota of concession. They should not get an inch of leeway. There should never be a concession made to these people who are acting in un-American interests. They should be fucking crushed. They should be crushed to the same level and intensity that they are trying to undermine our country. Defund the police? No. Well, we're going to march. You better march where the permit says you're allowed to march. You could do all these different things. The way to change society, by the way, is legislatively. It is politically. If you want to operate outside of that, okay, that means that you're trying to be a revolutionary, which makes you an enemy of America. I'm all about Americans looking to change the application of our identity to meet our current citizenry. Like, I'm all about Americans using the American process to make a better America. But somebody who says, fuck America, fuck everything America's about, hammer to nail. What's going on in Seattle right now? Those people should be fucking crushed. 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 You get whatever fucking agencies can be fucking activated and put on the streets there and just start fucking cracking skulls until you have order. It's called law enforcement. Enforce the fucking law. I read an article talking about all the people in Seattle, all the cops in Seattle that were resigning, asking to be transferred. Our recruitment was low because, see, in a system of checks and balances, there is a synergy that is found in a balanced dynamic between the three branches and the application of those branches in governing a people. When there's an imbalance, this thing starts to topple. When you have people in the executive branch trying to wield legislative authority, well, yeah, that's a problem. When you have people in the executive branch undermining the process of law enforcement and looking to act as some sort of judiciary, that's a problem. The process is the process. If you think that you, as a mayor of a city, can somehow just, decide unilaterally that we don't need police, there are consequences for that. And it's hard for me to see how these consequences are not going to escalate to the point where they become a threat to the constitutionality of your existence. And that's when the bigger hammer comes for you. Remember, 2016, they said, some polls were saying that Trump had less than a 10% chance, I think up to and including Election Day, of becoming president. That's the power of media. They've upped their game in the 4 years since. They've exacerbated a pandemic. New York, Pennsylvania, still not completely open. They've exacerbated that. Now they are looking at the George Floyd death as an opportunity to throw some more coal in the oven. And once this dies down, assuming it will, and I think it will, once this dies down, there'll be something else. Maybe it'll be connected to this. Maybe it'll be the next chapter of this George Floyd saga. Maybe it'll be something new. But they're going to keep it going right up until Election Day, because that's been the plan all day long. You could love Trump or hate Trump. Understand, Trump is not one of them. He's not one of them. It's not about, do I think Trump is great? Do I think he's a good president? It's about, is he going to be better than Biden? Those of you that say, well, I'm voting for this third party because this guy, he believes, like, shut the fuck up, child. Like, you're a fucking child. I'm a man of principle. I will not, okay, go over there. Go over there. Makes no fucking sense. It's really fucking stupid. What game do you think you're playing? Are you so fucking stupid that you think, well, I'm going to vote for, if I vote for Trump, it's supporting everything he stands for. No, it isn't, you fucking idiot. It's a vote in an election that puts somebody in office that is most in line with the views of the people that were available. Right now, it's Trump and Biden. If you vote for a third party, you're a fucking retard. This is more that virtue signaling bullshit. Well, every election I vote libertarian. Okay, loser. So every election you're a fucking loser. Okay. Jen says, the R strategists thrive in a certain environment. The K strategists thrive in a different environment. Each is promoting the type of environment that benefits his type. And if you've studied, RK selection theory, like this is this is nature. This is the way that it's always going to be. All of us are going to play our roles. All of us are going to pursue the lines of action that are most congruent, what we understand our mission to be at the time. Like, it's just all a very consistently designed game that we're playing. If you're sitting here marching for George Floyd, it's because you have nothing better to do. You have nothing better to do. Think about it. I'm an emergency room pediatric surgeon. But I'm not going to go to work today because I'm going to march for George Floyd. And the people go, no. Like, you need to save those babies in ER. Oh, so what you're saying is what I'm doing is more valuable than participating in what you're doing. Yeah. You are a pediatric emergency room surgeon. You need to save those babies. Gotcha. Everybody who actually goes to those isn't as valuable. They are at their best standing in a mob of fucking strangers in a street, chanting some chant that was given to them by somebody they don't know, in hopes that it supports something that they were told to believe in. Oh my God. Steve says, do we agree that cops need better training? Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, my God. In New York City, there are something like 37,000 cops. And there was a change made after Giuliani. And the psychology or the philosophy of this change was more cops is better than better trained cops. And the resources were diverted towards just hiring more and more people. See, it used to be that being a cop in New York City, was a culture. You'd find families of cops, right? And they were, predominantly Irish, but you found Italian families, cop families, black cop families, more recently, Hispanic, Puerto Rican cop families. It became a culture, became a role, like a class of people. It's now a city job. That's what being a cop is. It's a city job. How do I know this? Because you walk around and you see fucking diabetic-looking police officers. You see women fucking canvassing areas that they couldn't physically handle a fucking 12-year-old from the neighborhood. It is no longer about, let's get this job done. You know, you look at what was it, Game of Thrones, the people who lived at the wall, right? Like they had all, it was like this culture, this subculture, this identifying, group collective. These were people who defended the wall. They lived at the wall. I don't think they were allowed to have girlfriends. It's who they were. Well, cops used to be that. Now it's just a job. It's just a job. With that, you have the people, if they're not on the clock, if I'm not getting paid, why am I going to train? Why am I going to keep in shape? Why am I, and that is a phenomenon that you see now. Of course there are still overzealous cops, aggressive cops. Of course there are pieces of shit cops. That's never going to change. There's no legislative decision you're going to make that's gonna somehow deactivate that fucking part of human nature that reveals itself at a pretty, expected fucking probability. You're not gonna, I'm gonna pass this law and everyone's gonna be good. Oh, it's like people keep killing people. We should call it murder and make it illegal. That'll stop it. Oh my God. Of course cops need to be better fucking trained. There are good ones and bad ones, but holy shit, the bad ones are growing in number. They are growing in number. Mike says, what's up, Mike? He says the next thing will be Trump rallies causing a spike in COVID. Oh, yeah, that's still a Trump card they have, no pun intended. That's definitely in their back pocket. Steph says the spike will be to incentivize mail-in ballot to vote. Absolutely. There's so many more like witty memes out there than I could take credit for right now, but it's like everybody suddenly went from we all need mail-in voting so we don't die from the plague to everybody should be allowed to protest in the street. Yeah, but the protesters are wearing masks. So at a minimum, you're saying everybody could show up to vote if they have a mask. When people are not doing the logical, rational things, because here's the thing. If we have a standard, right, the Constitution, right, the laws, remember the laws, let's say the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. When something's being done, we could say, well, does this match that or not? Yes, it matches it, constitutional. Does not match it, unconstitutional. It's a very easy process. Whenever you see contradiction and hypocrisy, inconsistency, that means they are no longer connected to the standard. That means they are winging it. That's like when you look at somebody and you go, hey, I'm going to order food. You want Chinese? And they go, or Italian? We could do Italian. They got good pizza. And like you're basically just winging it based on what type of reaction you're getting. Let's say the Chinese spot was the only one open. Hey, I'm going to order. It's Chinese. Do you want any? Yeah, well, it's the only one open. All right, if it's the only one open. Like, that is when you are your positions are connected to a standard, as opposed when they're completely reactionary. If I'm trying to manipulate you, I am not going to use any standard to attach my positions to. I'm going to say whatever moves you to where I need you to go. Whether at the tail end of that process, you're going to be able to look at everything I've said to get you to do what I want, and there's going to be a lot of inconsistency there, hypocrisy, contradiction. Because I'm full of shit. I'm not trying to be truthful. I'm trying to manipulate. If I'm trying to be truthful, then everything I say will be consistent with the standard. So whenever you see inconsistency, it's because these people are full of shit. contradiction, full of shit, hypocrisy, full of shit. There's manipulation to be found there, not truth. All right, guys, I've been going for a while. I'm going to stop. I appreciate that I do these. I don't necessarily enjoy them. I'll be honest with you. I appreciate you guys for watching, though. I'll make another one soon. That's a promise. I'll talk to you guys soon.